Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. We are jumping right into a genuinely unorthodox, completely fascinating view of human history today. We're going to break down the really bold claims made in Chapter 3 of Ryuho Okawa's book, Zoroaster, How to Fight the Dark God of the Universe. Now, this was originally recorded on January 13, 2021, and the text argues something wild. It proposes that humanity is, and pretty much always has been, the target of a massive spiritual battle. The idea is that dark space forces have been pulling the strings behind the scenes using science, technology, and a very specific mindset to just exert total control over us. It's a huge narrative, so let's dive right into how this whole strategy comes together.
To kick things off, we really have to ask ourselves a crucial question. What on earth could possibly link the mythological Garden of Eden, the horrors of World War II eugenics, and modern social media censorship? I mean, on the surface, these are totally unrelated things, right? You've got ancient myth, incredibly dark 20th century history, and today's digital politics. But in this text, these aren't just random, isolated events. They are actually stitched together into one continuous, unbroken narrative of cosmic intervention. To really get what the author is saying, we have to look at how these totally different eras are basically just distinct phases of one master plan.
So the whole premise of the book rests on this idea that humanity is caught in a literal, active battle against dark space forces. It takes the ancient dualism of Zoroastrianism, that classic battle between light and darkness, good and evil, and completely updates it for the space age. The dark god in this book isn't some metaphor or a psychological concept. The text treats this entity and the forces working with it as literal cosmic actors actively messing with Earth, and their ultimate goal? To systematically completely sever humanity's connection to the divine.
Okay, before we go any further, we absolutely need to redefine a word we use every single day, and that word is materialism. The book doesn't use materialism to mean, wanting the newest smartphone or buying a luxury car. Instead, it describes materialism as a deliberate philosophical weapon. It's essentially a psychological trap meticulously set by these dark forces to make humans believe that absolutely nothing exists outside the physical world. Think about it. If you can convince an entire population that there's no spiritual realm, no afterlife, nothing divine, well, they become incredibly easy to control using purely physical and technological means.
And that brings us right to the meat of Chapter 3, which is actually titled Control Using Materialism and Scientific Technology. This is the core strategy. This dark control is rarely brute force. Actually, it's a slow, methodical grind using the advancement of science and technology over thousands of years, all paired with that materialistic philosophy we just talked about. The chapter outlines how these cosmic forces introduce concepts that look like amazing human progress, real game changers, but are allegedly designed to just bind us closer to the physical earth and pull us away from spiritual freedom.
So how does this actually play out over time? Well, it happens in three massive steps. We start way back, around 4000 BC with ancient Sumeria and the Eden myth. Then, we take a huge leap to the mid-20th century, zooming in on the horrific pseudoscience of World War II. And finally, the thread pulls us right into the 21st century, pointing straight at big tech and the digital world. The argument here is that while the methods change drastically, from ancient myths to modern smartphones, the endgame of enslaving humanity stays exactly the same.
Section 1. Ancient Interventions, the Genetic Experiments of Eden.
You know the traditional story of Adam and Eve? We'll throw that right out the window. According to the claims in this book, that story from Mesopotamia was actually a record of extraterrestrials creating alien-human hybrids. The narrative proposes that advanced beings landed on Earth and realized their original bodies just weren't suited for the environment here. So to fix this biological problem, they supposedly started doing radical genetic crossbreeding. They took early hominids and spliced them with their own DNA to engineer a hybrid race. In this view, Eden wasn't some magical, divine garden. It was literally a high-tech extraterrestrial laboratory.
Now put yourself in the shoes of an ancient human for a second. You don't have words like DNA, cloning, or genetic splicing. How would you possibly describe a high-tech medical procedure? The book posits that ancient accounts of gods making humans out of clay or putting a man to sleep to pull out a rib to make a woman were just ancient people trying their best to document advanced genetic experiments. Getting taken to a sky god's realm or being operated on was recorded through the only lens they had, ancient mythology. It's a really wild reframing of theology into ancient astronaut theory.
Section 2. The 20th Century Escalation, Eugenics and the Master Race.
Now we take a startling and honestly horrifying leap forward in time. The text claims that Hitler's eugenics programs were directly guided by a dark cosmic entity named Ahriman. Now, Ahriman is traditionally a figure from Zoroastrianism that represents evil, but here, he's framed as an active, highly intelligent extraterrestrial presence. The book suggests this intelligence deliberately manipulated the Nazi regime to use pseudoscience to literally engineer a specific type of human. It echoes those ancient genetic experiments of Eden, but this time weaponized for dictatorial purpose on a global scale.
The text frames this whole era as a stark, epic clash of ideals. On one side, you have spiritual freedom represented by Zoroaster's light, which is all about the soul, individuality, and a connection to the divine. On the flip side is materialistic control, driven by Ahriman's dark tech. By pushing humanity toward eugenics and treating people like mere biological machines to be bred and categorized, these dark forces were basically trying to erase the very concept of a soul. Because if humans believe we're just meat and genetics, spiritual freedom is gone and totalitarian control becomes a whole lot easier.
Section 3. The 21st Century Battlefield. Big Tech as Digital Enslavement.
So if ancient myths were phase 1 and 20th century eugenics was phase 2, where does that leave us today? Well, the book points a massive finger straight at modern big tech. It specifically groups the major players into the acronym GAFA: Google, Apple, Facebook, and Amazon. The text describes these colossal entities as the newest tools for this dark, materialistic control. Most of us just see these platforms as super convenient services, right? But from this cosmic perspective, they are deliberate mechanisms designed to monopolize our attention, dictate our reality, and trap our consciousness entirely inside a physical, digital box.
What this means is that things like algorithmic control and digital censorship aren't just seen as corporate content moderation. The author views them as literal, cosmic, spiritual warfare. The text actually cites controlling massive follower bases as a form of mass hypnosis. It also points to the silencing and banning of prominent political figures, specifically bringing up Donald Trump on platforms like Twitter and Facebook, as proof that tech companies are acting as unaccountable rulers of public discourse. Ultimately, the book argues the real goal here is to completely erase spiritual or dissenting thought from the public square.
There's a quote in the text that just hits the nail on the head. Because this world is all there is, it can be tinkered with, and science can rule. This right here is the ultimate catastrophic danger of the materialism we defined earlier. If these tech platforms, and the unseen forces allegedly behind them, can convince you that absolutely nothing exists beyond the physical world, then humans just become biological data points. We become things to be tinkered with, optimized, and ruled by algorithms. The book presents this as a profound loss of our humanity, completely disguised as technological progress.
Connecting the deep past to our immediate future, the text warns that this ancient genetic meddling is culminating right in front of our eyes. The book explicitly warns about the rapid rise of AI, cyborgs, and artificial human manipulation. It particularly notes authoritarian regimes that are supposedly developing artificial soldiers. The argument is that these dark forces have leveled up. They went from tinkering with DNA in ancient times to biological engineering in the 20th century, and now they are aiming for total technological integration, creating perfectly obedient humans completely severed from anything divine.
When you connect all these massive dots, this explainer reveals a worldview where absolutely nothing is an accident. The mythological Garden of Eden, the horrors of the 1940s, and that highly curated social media feed you scroll through every single day, they are all deeply tied together. In this framework, technology is consistently weaponized by unseen forces. It is one single, unbroken narrative of cosmic control. Materialism is the cage, and scientific technology is the lock designed to keep us trapped inside.
Now, regardless of whether you buy into this literal cosmic battle, we have to pause and ask ourselves a pretty massive question. Why do these grand, sweeping theories that blend ancient mythology with modern tech resonate so deeply with us right now? Maybe it's just human nature. In a world where technology is moving way faster than our ethics and a handful of tech giants control global communication, we are all just desperately looking for structure and maybe trying to identify the forces at play in an incredibly unpredictable world. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything, and I'll see you next time.